Indemnification can be either common law or contractual, and we're going to take a look at both types in this presentation. Common law indemnification is essentially what the Michigan Court of Appeals said in this case. It's simply an equitable right to restitution that one party has when it's been held liable for something bad that somebody else did. So if you've been held liable as a result of a wrong that somebody else has done, the concept here is that, and that might happen, for example, because you're the owner of property and somebody slips and falls on it, but the hazard was created by, the person who shovels your sidewalk or something. And so as between you and the injured party, okay, you're liable, but there's really somebody else in the background there. And as between you and the sidewalk shoveler, it's really the sidewalk shoveler's problem. And so common law indemnity would permit you as the owner to basically get back from the sidewalk shoveler whatever amount you were held to have to pay to the injured person who slipped and fell. Okay, that's common law indemnification, just the basic concept that as between you and the sidewalk shoveler, the loss should really fall on the sidewalk shoveler. Of course, as between you and the injured party, I mean, it's your sidewalk that you're responsible for maintaining, so certainly as between you and the person who fell, you're responsible. But as between you and the sidewalk shoveler, really the loss should be borne by that person. Okay, this is different from contribution. And I've got a blurb here from Michigan civil jurisprudence that just distinguishes between indemnification on the one hand, which, as this indicates, shifts the entire loss from the party who's been forced to pay to the party who properly should bear the burden, right? As between you and the sidewalk shoveler, if you were 0% at fault, right? You just hired this person to shovel your sidewalk. They did a bad job. They left ice patches and some innocent third party came along and slipped and fell and got hurt. Okay, common law indemnification would permit you to go after the sidewalk shoveler and shift the entire loss of that slip and fall victim that you've had to pay onto the person who's actually at fault. On the other hand, contribution, which is similar but different, common law contribution distributes the loss among joint tortfeasors, requiring each to pay its proportionate share. So if you and somebody else are jointly responsible for the sidewalk being icy, for example, and a third party gets injured as a result, and the third party goes after you, you might have a right to contribution from your joint tortfeasor. So if you were each 50% at fault, and you can imagine a hypothetical on your own, if you're each 50% at fault, and yet you've had to pay 100% to the injured party, you would have a common law right to contribution to the tune of 50% from your joint tortfeasor. Now, indemnification is also something that many parties are not willing to leave to the vagaries of common law. And so indemnification provisions that are negotiated as part of commercial contracts are very common. And for example, in the context of a construction contract, the AIA A201 has an indemnification provision that basically, at least the bit I've got quoted here, requires the contractor to indemnify the owner from any claims, etc., to the extent caused by the negligent acts or omissions of the contractor that result in bodily injury, sickness, disease, death, destruction, injury, or destruction of tangible property. Okay, so there are a number of points here that are worth noting. One, it's the contractor indemnifying the owner. Second, only for the contractor's negligence and only to the extent that that negligence results in personal injury or property damage. So that's a fairly balanced, let's say, or not a particularly onerous indemnification provision. Now, because indemnification is viewed by commercial contracting parties as a way of shifting risk to other parties, not all indemnification provisions in contracts are quite this modest. In fact, it's often the case that you'll see. Okay, so indemnification is a big thing. It's a highly negotiated provision because it is the quintessential risk shifting provision. And you have to parse the language of a given indemnification provision very carefully to make sure you understand exactly what's covered and what's not. And at the same time, be aware of anti-indemnification statutes around the country that will limit the extent to which indemnification is legally permissible.